I play the Hive almost every day, and it's honestly an amazing server, but in reality, it's not perfect. So I'll be giving you 100 reasons the Hive sucks, and not because I hate the server, but in hopes that some of these things will get changed in the future. Which brings me to reason number 1, capture the flag. When it first released, Capture the Flag was actually a good game mode, and regarded one of the best on the server. But in the few years since then, with the game mode being neglected a bit, it had a major infestation of sweats and cheaters, and now the game is almost unplayable. Bro, I queued a game of this to get a clip for this video, and there's immediately one level 50 and some kid talking trash in the chat. I think that just sums up my point. But Capture the Flag isn't the only flawed game mode, as you have the Bridge. Bridge is a very simple game on the server, and that's kind of the problem. After a little while, this game gets very repetitive very quickly. Most of the time you end up playing against very inexperienced players, so there's not even a challenge to these games. Another game with this sort of issue is Ground Wars. Ground Wars is like the Bridge in the way that it's very simplistic, but there are these power-ups that do add something unique to the game. But I'm not gonna lie, most of them are honestly pointless or don't do very much at all, like the Explosive Egg or the Blindness Egg. And after a while, this game does also get pretty repetitive too. But let's talk about something I love about this server. The levels. Hive has an overall very good leveling system, except when it comes to a few different game modes. Like the Bridge. You know how I said Bridge gets very repetitive? Well, its leveling system also sucks. It takes roughly 1,000 games to max this, which is insane considering how repetitive this game is. I remember playing about 300 games of this in like a week, and my mind was just numb. Bridge definitely has this issue, but a game mode that has it way worse is Murder Mystery. Murder Mystery has 5 times the levels Bridge does, and sometimes you can spend upwards of 3 hours on a single level. Not only that, but it also has prestiges, so once you reach level 100, you still have 500 levels of pain and suffering until you are officially max level. Murder Mystery isn't the only game mode with prestiges though, as Skywars has it too. Skywars is my favorite game mode on the Hive, and if you know anything about me, I have actually been grinding Skywars Prestige ever since it dropped. But the reason I think prestiges kinda suck is because they make the game so sweaty. Ever since they've added prestiges, every Skywars sweat ever has returned to the game, making it very difficult to play at certain times, and especially with the number of hackers it has brought back too. And if you thought all that was enough, once you prestige in Skywars or Murder Mystery, you actually lose all your level unlocks. This means everything you earned after those thousands of games are now just gone, and you have to unlock them all over again. So those are a few things that Hive has added that kinda suck. But let's talk about what they haven't added or updated yet. Like Block Party. Block Party hasn't had a single update since the game's release. There hasn't even been a small patch to change anything in-game besides a minor patch not long after release to add some things to custom servers. Block Party is the only game that hasn't received a single update since release, but some other game modes have still been neglected quite a lot too, like Block Drop. Block Drop is one of the chillest games on Hive. It is a nice, casual game that isn't too sweaty, but it still hasn't had an update in over 1,000 days. There haven't been any new maps, power-ups, or even extra levels. But speaking of levels, there are actually a bunch of game modes on Hive that haven't had any extra levels since release or in a very long time, like Block Drop. But there's also some other game modes, like Ground Wars, The Bridge, Gravity, Block Party, Death Run, and finally Hide and Seek. All these either haven't had a level update in over 2 years, or have never received a level update ever. Speaking of updates, Hive has this roadmap which shows what update Hive is working on, and it's really great, but they never actually announce any release dates. So things like the Murder Mystery update have been on here since February, and it is currently October at the time of recording this, and we still have no idea if this is anywhere close to being released. Kinda like Skyblock Horizons. The Hive announced they were working on Skyblock Horizons at the start of 2024, and we are still yet to hear any real news on it. As much as I want new updates to the server, some of the pre-existing stuff still has some issues, like Bedwars. Currently in Bedwars there are these challenges, and well, they're not really challenging exactly, and more time consuming, like playing 250 games or drinking 100 potions. The only one of these that feels like a real challenge is to win without placing any blocks, but this is the only challenge here with any sort of real difficulty. But another issue I have with Bedwars are some of the items, like the Antidote Potion. Drinking this potion clears some of your negative effects you might have, which sounds good on the surface, but it's so situational as potions rarely get used, and even then you would need to find the time to use it properly in the middle of the fight. But this isn't the only potion like that, as you have the potion of mining fatigue. This potion is simple. It splashes mining fatigue on the opponent. It sounds like it would help you defend your bed, as they won't be able to break the bed with mining fatigue, but since you have to be close enough to splash them, this ends up kinda similar to the antidote potion, as it's way too situational in its current state. So those items are kinda underpowered, but this next one kinda has the opposite issue, and that is Deep Slate. You can buy Deep Slate for 2 diamonds, so at the start of a game, you can bridge to the diamond gen, quickly get 2 diamonds, and get some Deep Slate. But if you want to buy a pickaxe to break that, you're gonna need 4 diamonds, double the price of Deep Slate. And at this point, your opponent will have also bridged to the diamond gen, and it slows down the game incredibly, usually ending in a long stalemate until another team shows up to kill you. If they made pickaxes 2 diamonds or Deep Slate 4 diamonds for 32, this wouldn't be so much of an issue. Another item that's a little weird is the Bridge Placer. This item used to be called the Auto Bridger, and honestly, that's such a better name for it, but it also used to be stackable back then too. And now, whenever I buy a couple Bridge Placers, my inventory is always filled immediately. But the final thing I don't like about Bedwars is that there's no trios. Before Bedwars got added, there used to be Treasure Wars, which was basically just Bedwars, and that game mode had trios and would let you play in teams of 3. Now you only have the option of duos or squads, and it's a little annoying when you have a party of 3 players. But that's enough of Bedwars. Let's talk about Skywars. Now this is my favorite game mode on the Hive, but there are so many issues here. Like Skywars challenges. Yeah, they literally just don't exist. Skywars has a max level of 600 and has no alternative ways of gaining XP, so it can be a little annoying and demotivating when you're playing the game. Additionally, Skywars does not have crafting. It would be really nice if you could craft, and would add way more depth to the game being able to craft different things for unique traps. And it would be an easy way to add a bunch of new items to Skywars without making them drop from ores. Over the years, Skywars has gone through a lot of changes and has had multiple game modes like Skywars Classic. Skywars Classic was a version of Skywars without ores and had a totally different loot pool. The games were faster paced and more interesting, and it was by far my favorite game mode on Hive. But only after a couple of months, Hive removed it and has not come back since. Another game mode like that is Skywars Kits. This was like your regular Skywars ores, but it had kits, which would give you different things like ender pearls or snowballs upon kill, or give you unique items like the spell of invisibility. This was just a fun alternative to Skywars, and with the game having 600 levels and taking forever to reach max level, having alternate game modes would certainly help keep the game fun after thousands of games. I did mention this earlier with prestiges, but Skywars' biggest problem right now has to be the sweats. Like, you cannot play a game without finding some high-level sweat who drag clicks like 6,000 CPS, and it makes the game very unfun. Skywars is actually slightly different to the regular game, as it has different physics. And this means certain objects like sand or gravel can just float, or you can place ladders on top of each other like this. And sometimes this can be a fun mechanic to mess around with, but in most cases it just makes the gameplay really awkward. Another problem with the Hive's physics are the projectiles. You might not notice anything at first when shooting a projectile. It feels similar to the regular game until you take a closer look. When aiming upwards especially, the projectiles just curve straight up, making aiming at anything that's slightly above you very difficult, and in most cases you actually have to aim lower than the target to even hit them. Skywars also doesn't have vanilla armor. The armor system in Skywars works slightly different to the vanilla game. If you have full diamond armor and get hit with a sharpness 1 diamond sword, you will take half a heart. But if you even have half an armor bar less, you will take double the damage. So if you're missing even half an armor bar in Skywars, you can end up taking double the damage, which just makes the game so much more luck-based. Another thing that's different about the Skywars physics are the boomboxes. Boomboxes are also in survival games, and they work so much better there. The main difference between boomboxes in Skywars and survival games are how long they take to explode. In survival games, when you throw a boombox, it takes 1.5 seconds to explode, and in Skywars it takes 3 seconds. Yeah, double the time it takes in SG. This means you cannot use them when chasing an opponent, or even throw them at an opponent from a distance, because they can just simply run away before it even gets near to exploding. That's enough about the physics, but Skywars has weekly items that change every week, and some of them are great, but some of them are awful, like the fire reflective chestplate. This is just a leather chestplate that reflects any fire damage when hit. Well, almost. It only reflects fire dealt from other players, using things like the fire sword or bow of embers. So if you get hit with a fire trail or a fire charge, you still burn. And not to mention, this is just a leather chest plate, so you will end up taking so much extra damage just by wearing this. Another terrible weekly item is the cobweb boombox. This is just a boombox that places a bunch of cobwebs when it explodes. You'd think this would be useful to slow down your opponent when running away, or even to trap them in to kill them. But since Skywars' boomboxes take so long to explode, usually you don't hit them, or if it does explode in time, it rarely even hits them anyway. Similar to that, we have the fire boombox. This is just a boombox that sets everyone near it on fire when it explodes, including yourself. This boombox isn't like an ordinary boombox, as it explodes much faster, leaving very little time for your opponent to react. Now this would be good, but it also leaves you very little time to react, so you always get hit by the fire too. Another boombox to make this list is the lucky boombox. This is a boombox that when it explodes gives a random boombox effect. It could be poison, fire, slowness, or even just a regular boombox, among a couple of other things. This is very luck based, so sometimes it could be useful, but this boombox takes longer to explode than most, meaning the very slow boombox is now even slower, and you don't know what it's going to do, making it effectively useless. And the final weekly item to make this list is the lucky bow. The lucky bow has a chance to do a random thing like shoot a boombox or an ender pearl, or even turn your arrow into lightning. You don't know how many times I've gone to shoot my opponent and it break immediately, or throw an ender pearl straight into him, making me take 3 hearts of damage at point blank range. The final thing I want to mention about Skywars is the grace period. The grace period disables you from using things like arrows, snowballs, or even ender pearls, so you don't accidentally use them before the game starts. However, you can still accidentally use boomboxes, and I've wasted several boomboxes because of this. As well as that, you can also waste your spells. I've accidentally picked up a Swifter spell so many times and wasted it by using it before the grace period by mistake. If they just disable these from the grace period, it would be such a nice change. I might have been complaining a lot about Hive so far, but something Hive always does well are its maps. Well, almost always. Like Mobius. Now this is actually a pretty cool map, unless it's summertime, and then you have this abomination. And the same goes for gates in Bedwars. But speaking of Bedwars maps, in Bedwars Duos, the map Amulet has to be one of the worst maps on this entire server. It takes so long to get across the map, and takes so many blocks it slows down the game like crazy. Another map like that is Prosperity from Capture the Flag. Capture the Flag already suffers enough from longer games and sweats, and this map is the biggest of them all. It takes almost a minute from spawning in to get to the enemy's flag. That's by taking the shortest route possible. This map is also pretty wide, and so games on this map can last forever. If you've ever played Death Run, you might have seen the map Steampunk, and honestly, it looks like a pretty cool map, but playing it is a different question. The traps on this map are awful, especially towards the end, where you have several unavoidable traps in a row, which means if you die to one of them, the timer on the trap will be recharged by the time you get back to the trap, meaning if the death is good enough, you basically just die endlessly. Castletown is by far the most popular map in Murder Mystery, but it actually just sucks. If you get murder on this map, you are almost guaranteed to lose because of how the innocents can endlessly run and even use speed to get away from you. And if that wasn't enough, if the innocents collect 3 keys, the armory opens up, which guarantees everyone in the game gets a bow and arrow for free. The best part is this can be opened literally 5 seconds into a game, meaning everyone on the map can get a bow and arrow immediately, and it honestly just ruins the game for both the innocents and the murderer. Another terrible murder mystery map is Nectar Lake. This map is just one giant circle, so if you are on one side and the murderer is on the other side, you might never see each other. And this just makes the game very slow and boring, and not only that, there are these bear traps that literally just slow down the innocents. You can't see them on the floor, and they just grab you and slow you down for a couple of seconds, and it's super annoying. But if you're an OG Hive player, you might recognize this map and ask, well, what's wrong with this map? This map is awesome. And yeah, that's literally just the problem. When Hive replaced Treasure Wars with Bedwars, they added every single map from Bedwars squads except this one. And this is arguably one of the community's favorite maps. If Hive brought this back for Bedwars, that would have actually been amazing. Now, these next few maps all have the same common issue, particles. Starting with Turmoil, they have these terrible particles everywhere. And it's the same with Volcano as well as Depths. But the last thing that sucks about the Hive maps are its nighttime maps. When they're daytime, they end up looking so much better, and it's also just not as dark. I know a lot of you might like the nighttime maps, but personally, the majority of these maps just look better during the day. And and they're especially better for videos too. One of Hive's most annoying features has to be the fact that replay has no filters. If you've ever tried to find an old replay, it is nearly impossible because of replay's lack of filters. And you could only see 10 replays on a single page, which means it takes forever to scroll back to all the games. Now let's talk about Gravity. Gravity has a different voting system to other game modes, as it chooses the 5 most voted for maps instead of 1. However, you can still only vote for 1 map. I've seen people in the past try to vote for multiple maps, and it just obviously does not work. So if Hive changed this system or made it a little bit clearer, that would have been really nice. Also in Gravity, sometimes you'll just survive without touching the water. I don't know how this happens, but it's just a weird glitch, and it kinda defeats the purpose of the game. But another thing that really sucks are the customs. If you've ever tried selecting a map in Gravity, this is what happens. Yeah, you have to deselect every single map you don't want to play, which is just stupid. I don't know why they made it the other way around for this one game mode. Okay, this next one's a totally optional thing, but whoever made it is actually insane. Blind Gravity. I don't know who thought this would be a good CS option, but it has to be the most painful thing I have done ever. That's enough for Gravity now. But in Death Run, sometimes you will just die without even touching a trap. Usually this happens with any of the big explosion ones, but I've seen it happen with other traps too. Also, the poison trap is now just invisible. You literally cannot see when it's active. I don't even need to tell you how big of an issue that is. So those are some OP bugs with traps, but how about a very stupid trap? The Evoker trap. This trap literally cannot get a kill. It is the dumbest, most pointless trap ever, and I don't think I've ever gotten a kill with it. Parkour Worlds released well over a year ago now, and it still has some major issues, like you cannot queue it from the game selector. You can literally queue every other game mode from here, and you can even queue replay from this. Also, you still cannot complete the Parkour Worlds shop despite having completed every parkour course because you will just not have enough coins. And now I have a few small things I wanted to mention about some of the other game modes on this server. On the map SG4 in survival games, you have this infinite launchpad loop, and it is super annoying when someone just infinitely runs from you using this thing. In hide and seek, you will occasionally just get an AFK seeker, and the game pretty much doesn't start for another 2 minutes until a random secondary seeker is selected. In the bridge, you have 3 different kits: Leap, Snowballs, and Golden Apple. And well, 2 of them are kinda useless. The Golden Apple kit never gets used because the other 2 kits are far better, and the Snowballs aren't nearly as good as the Leap, as you can leap past your opponent and win the game without needing to fight them. And finally, Speed Builders is still an LTM. So Speed Builders is one of my favorite game modes on this server, and it is so fun to play, and yet it could just disappear any second, as it is still only a limited time game mode. Another thing about Hive is you can use almost any skin you want on this server, which is really great, except for a couple of skins. Hive does ban some short skins, so you cannot use them. However, they also ban some really weird skins that you can't use for seemingly no reason. Also, if you wear a hat with any costume, it will end up looking super stupid. And the same thing happens if you use a back bling too. Now, if you've ever watched a Hive livestream before, you might have seen custom servers. And well, there are a few very dumb things about these servers. Like, you cannot use this CS shortcut command unless you're a Hive partner. I have no idea why Hive don't just make this available to everyone, because it's just so nice and saves a good amount of time, but it's really weird that only partners can do it. But even as a partner, not all of these commands still work. Like /CS hub does not work, and this also applies to /CS hub sky, hub build, hub bed, and hub parkour. In Ground Wars customs, you cannot select which team you want the players to be on, and this is super annoying for setting up things like tournaments or other events where you want custom teams, as you can do this in literally every other game mode on the server. That might seem annoying, but in Block Drop you cannot set anyone to spectate it. If you want to spectate a custom game of Block Drop, the only way you can do this is by jumping off right at the start and watching it. You also cannot select spectator in a bridge custom. However, unlike Block Drop, you can't just die to spectate, as you will just respawn. Also, if you make a speed builder custom and don't set the teams, you will always have 9 teams by default instead of 12. This means some players will be on teams of 2, and the games end up being a little unbalanced because of this. And the final thing that sucks about custom servers is Bedwars free shop. Unlike Treasure Wars free shop, in Bedwars free shop you cannot disable what items are in the shop, which just means this ends up being a game of who can spam the most fireballs. These next few reasons on the list probably won't won't affect you as it has to do with the nicking system, but I still want to mention it anyway. Some of these nicknames you get when you nick are so obvious, while some of them are just literally impossible to get as real Xbox usernames. Also, whenever you nick, it still shows your skin to everyone, so if I want to play Skywars on stream and use my skin, you can easily target by just looking at what skin I'm using on stream. And this makes stream sniping really easy, and there are honestly not many counters to sniping. Thankfully, Hive does ban any unwanted snipers, but it's still super annoying having to deal with snipers in almost every game I play on stream. Over the years, Hive has added a lot of new things, but they've also removed some other features like Nemo Slap. If you ever played Hive Arcade when it was around, there was this one iconic game called Nemo Slap. It was literally just a game of sumo with knockback Nemos, and it was so fun, but unfortunately, with the removal of Hive Arcade, Nemo Slap also went along with it. There's also no longer a Christmas LTM anymore. In previous years, Hive used to have a limited time game over Christmas called Snowballs, but once Hive added Ground Wars as a permanent game, this was never seen again, likely due to the similarity of both games. Before August of 2023, this is what the Hive Hub actually looked like. It was so different, but the best part was the Hive sign. You could actually stand on it and it looked so much cooler. But unfortunately, when Hive changed the hub, they also changed the sign to this. Also back then, Hive used to have some social media presence. They used to upload videos for like every update on YouTube or post tweets about all these new things. But for the past 2 years or so, there has been very little promotion happening online, which just is a little unfortunate to see. And now these last couple of reasons were all reasons I didn't know where else to put, so they might seem a little bit random, like streamer rank. You might have heard of Hive's YouTube rank before, but they actually also have a rank dedicated for Twitch streamers. Except like nobody has it. They made the rank extremely difficult to get, almost too difficult. And so the only people who have the rank are big time streamers who don't play the server much. And because of that, there's actually a very small Hive community on Twitch. Swimming. You can swim on the Hive. Well, sorta. This doesn't actually change your hitbox or anything, and it only shows on your screen, so you cannot swim through 1x1 gaps or underneath certain things like lily pads. And so you often do end up getting caught on these things when swimming. Hackers. I feel like anytime I play any PvP game, I will run into a hacker within a couple of games. It's almost impossible to avoid a hacker on this server for longer than a couple games. I do see Hive work on their anti-cheat every so often, but surely more can be done for players like this. A few months ago, Minecraft released vibrant visuals, and it looks great, but you can't actually use it on Hive. Now, I will cut the Hive some slack for this, as it is a Microsoft issue. Currently, you cannot use vibrant visuals on any server with encrypted texture packs. And since Hive doesn't want you stealing their assets, you cannot use vibrant visuals on their server. Hidden leaderboards. If you've played the Hive enough, you might know about /leaderboard, which shows the top leaderboard players for each game mode. But it would be so much cooler and rewarding if they actually displayed this somewhere physical in-game. Similar to showing your stats in the hub. If there was some dedicated place in the Bedwars or Skywars micro hub to display the all-time and even monthly leaderboards, it'd be so much more rewarding and encouraging to grind these game modes. /emote is a command that makes this cool little emote appear above your player. It's kind of a fun thing to use when in the hub, and it also shows when you type certain emoticons in the chat. But this is the only time it actually does show up. If you could run this command in certain game modes, it would actually be a fun way of communicating with other players. If you've bought a ticket on the Hive and ever run /quest, this is what you see. It shows a giant list of every single quest in the ticket. It's a huge mess and would be way cleaner if we displayed each quest in some sort of menu, similar to what happens in the main hub. Sometimes when in the main hub, the friends list just does not work. I've seen 1 or 2 other people have this experience, but I cannot ever use my friends list when on EU region for whatever reason. This bug is actually fixed on NA and even Asia, but not EU for some reason. And the final reason is I cannot be Jack Black. It just sets you back to a default skin. Give the people what they want, Hive. Let me be Jack Black. Hive might have a bunch of small issues, but honestly, it's still a great server. So if you want to see 100 reasons the Hive is good, then click this video on screen.